Well, before I get to that, let's talk about what warranties are. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, a warranty is an enforceable guarantee. All right, an enforceable guarantee about the characteristics of goods purchased. What a warranty is that it's guaranteeing you a certain quality or a certain performance in whatever the good is that you're doing. Now, usually these are extra. You have a contract to purchase it, whatever it is, and then on the side, it's like a little side dish, you have a warranty that's going to guarantee you some characteristic or some ability about that good. So this becomes part of the contract, but it really is sort of on the side. All right? It's very easy to have both a contract formation issue, right, or another contract, or an issue about, say, the interpretation of the terms involving looking at usage of trade, course of performance, course of dealing, and then also, oh, by the way, you know, the product or the good in question doesn't even do what it's supposed to, or it's broken. You know, then you have to think warranties. All right, so now we're actually looking at the quality of that good. Okay. So the Uniform Commercial Code in Article 2 recognizes 4 warranties. The first is a warranty of title. We're not going to spend a ton of time with this. We'll spend a little bit just kind of give you an overview, but there's so much more interesting stuff in here, so I'm really not going to go there much. Implied warranty of merchantability. All right, this is an important one. This comes up a lot, and it's useful, so we will spend some time with that one. The implied warranty of fitness for a particular purpose, again, comes up in a lot of interesting ways. We'll spend some time with it. And lastly, express warranties, which is probably what most of you think of when you think of the term warranties. Okay, so let's dive in. The warranty of title. I don't want to spend a ton of time here. Basically what this is saying is that the buyer is going to get title and ownership to the goods that they purchase, free from encumbrances and liens. All right. The seller basically is giving a warranty of title, saying that I have the ability to sell this to you without asking someone else first. One of the encumbrances and liens that can appear on a product, on a good, I should say, are secured interests. So if you've purchased a piece of industrial machinery and the seller has kept a secured interest on that machinery pending your ability to pay off the purchase price of it, and you try to sell it before you've completely satisfied that secured interest. In other words, you haven't paid the full price yet. You're on a payment plan, you're paying $1,000 a month or whatever, and it's not over yet. That secured interest still attaches. You have violated the warranty of title to the person who bought that piece of machinery from you, because you didn't have title and ownership free from encumbrances and liens. And by selling it, you're giving that warranty. It's sort of there automatically. Any good that's sold carries with it a warranty of title. So if you find out after you've purchased something that that person didn't have it free from encumbrances and liens, you have a cause of action for breach of warranty against the seller, right? Coming back to the concept of causes of action. Breach of warranty is a cause of action, just like breach of contract is a cause of action. And the damages, the things that you can go to the court and ask them to give you so that you be made whole again, are very similar. Okay, so that's pretty much really all I have for warranty of title. I just want you to be aware of that. Implied warranty of merchantability. Try saying that. A little bit more in depth. And we're going to spend some time with the definition. First of all, this applies to any sale, all right? Not just certain types of sales, all right? But, all right, the key word being sale here, all right? If somebody's let you borrow something, this doesn't apply. And if somebody is leasing under Article 2A, there are other warranties that apply under Article 2A that we're not going to get into. But we're talking here about a sale of a good, all right, by a merchant. That's another critical part of this definition. And we've talked about what a merchant is. But keep in mind, not all sellers are going to be merchants. All right. So the implied warranty of merchantability, I mean the word is right there in the name, should key you into it. That we're looking for a sale by a merchant that carries with it this implied warranty. All right. Where you have a sale by a merchant, it's going to be implied that the goods sold, and we'll finish up the definition in a second. The key word here being implied, right? This warranty doesn't need to be stated. It doesn't need to be discussed. It doesn't need to be in writing. If there is a contract, a written contract for the sale of goods, it doesn't matter if this is in there or not. It's implied. It's automatic. All right. It's implied if you're dealing with a merchant. As long as it's a sale of goods, you're dealing with a merchant, this is going to be implied. And what is it that's implied? That the goods sold are fit for their ordinary purpose. Right? The key word here being ordinary. Right? So what do we mean by that? Well, here's a classic example of this. All right. Ordinary use. You are shopping at the grocery store, and you are buying cans of soup, Campbell's soup. And you take it home, you crack it open, you heat it up, and you're eating it, and lo and behold, you bite down into a razor blade, and it cuts open your mouth. Now, we haven't talked about torts yet, but when we get there, we'll talk about causes of action you may have in tort. But what about breach of warranty? All right? I would argue, and you probably would too, that in this situation, you bought it from a merchant, right? Let's say you bought it at Hannaford or Shaw's. They are a company, they are a merchant that deals in goods of that kind. They sell food, right? They sell cans of soup regularly. All right, it's not like you bought it from somewhere else. You bought it from somebody who regularly sells these things. So they are a merchant. And because you bought it from a merchant, it's automatically implied that whatever you buy is going to be fit for its ordinary purpose. What's the ordinary purpose of soup? It's to eat it. So the argument you're going to make is it wasn't fit for its ordinary purpose because it had a freaking razor blade in it. All right? That's fit for its ordinary purpose. Now, where this gets dicey in the food example, and this has come up a number of times, is let's say instead you bought a can of clam chowder, you pop it open, you heat it up, and you eat it, and you bite down into a little piece of a clam shell. All right? Now, the argument is, hey, look, I bought it from a grocery store, they're a merchant, it's implied that the goods are going to be fit for their ordinary purpose. The ordinary purpose of clam chowder is to be eaten, and because it had clamshell in it, it wasn't fit for that purpose, and I suffered damages because of that. As a matter of fact, I broke a tooth or something. The courts have repeatedly interpreted this to mean that that's to be sort of expected. So it's ordinary that you might find a piece of clamshell in a clam chowder or a little piece of beef bone in ground beef. It's not ordinary that you'd find a razor blade in there or an elastic band. That's not fit for its ordinary purpose. So there's a little bit of sort of reasonability implied into this, but again, that's dancing on sort of the fault line, and I'm not going to test you on that, but it at least makes you think, well, what is its ordinary purpose? If you're buying a knife and its ordinary purpose is to cut things, I have a really sharp set of kitchen knives that I use when I'm cooking at home, and yes, I do cook, and well, might I add. As a matter of fact, I'll be hosting a Super Bowl party, and I'm really looking forward to cooking for that. It's going to be awesome. So I have a set of kitchen knives. They're super sharp, and I keep them sharp because that's their purpose, is to cut things. But people have tried to make the argument before that they bought knives, they cut themselves, and that they weren't fit for their ordinary purpose because they were too sharp. And that is a losing argument. All right? However, somebody who buys a knife because they want to bring it home because they got something stuck in their toaster and they want to stick it in there to try to get it out, and they find out it's not fit for that purpose because it's metal and conducts electricity and they get an electric shock, well, that's not its ordinary purpose. So you don't have an implied warranty of merchantability there. All right, so look at the purpose that the good is sold and is being used for, and ask, is that its ordinary purpose? And if it is, it should be fit for that purpose as long as it was sold by a merchant. And again, regardless of the sellers, think about the example of Hannaford and Shaw's. It doesn't matter if the seller knows that you're buying it, or if the seller is negligent. I mean, Shaw's had no idea that there was a razor blade in that can of soup. They didn't open it and check it. All right. So whether or not they were careful or negligent in this case doesn't apply. This is a warranty question. All right, and they've either breached that warranty or they haven't. If they've been careful enough is not relevant. We'll talk about care when we get to torts. Okay, next one. Implied warranty of fitness for a particular purpose. Differences here, very important differences to make. First of all, any seller. We're not dealing with merchants anymore, we're dealing with anybody. Anybody who's selling something. All right, so note the difference in language. Seller, not merchant, and anybody can be a seller. Who knows of the buyer's particular purpose for the goods. All right, keywords here being the particular purpose. If you go in and buy a can of soup and say, hey, I'm going to eat this, that's not a particular purpose. If you go in and buy a knife and say, I'm looking for a knife that I can use to, I don't know, well, let's go with it, stick into a toaster to get something in that's been lodged in there. All right, the seller knows that the buyer has that particular purpose. Now you got to start thinking about this other implied warranty. You're not using it for its ordinary purpose, so even if the seller is a merchant, the implied warranty of merchantability doesn't even apply anymore, right? Once we have a particular purpose. Okay. And knows, and the seller in this case knows that the buyer is relying on seller's knowledge to select suitable goods for that purpose, right? The key here being the knowledge that the buyer is relying. You're going to have to see, in order for this to sort of come up, you're going to have to see some communication between buyer and seller. The buyer is going to go up to the seller and say, hey, I'm looking for something that I can use to do X. Do you have something that would work for that? And it's a particular kind of purpose. Now remember, we're talking about the seller's knowledge here. So it sounds a little bit like a merchant, right? And merchants are the ones who have superior knowledge of things. But it doesn't have to be a merchant in this case. Even if you're an idiot, you can be relied on for your knowledge to select suitable goods for a purpose and create an implied warranty of fitness for a particular purpose. So that's another sort of trapdoor that you might get caught up on in this. And of course, the last part of this being that the buyer does, in fact, rely. So the buyer goes to this seller, says, I'm looking to get this good for this particular purpose, and I wanted to get your advice or your opinion on what I should use for that purpose. And then the seller says, oh, I think you should use this. And the buyer relies on the seller's opinion. All right? So actually relying matters. I know that Angela and Michael are going to be doing this case, Keith versus Buchanan, and normally it would be at this point that we would kind of stop to talk about the issues in that case, and we will get to them, I promise, as soon as we get back in class. It's one of the things we definitely need to do, but I think it illustrates that case, and not to kind of give away where we're going with that, but that case does illustrate a lot of the tricks and trouble that you get into in dealing with implied warranties of merchantability, implied warranties of fitness for a particular purpose, and our last one as well. Before I go into the last one, though, I plan on posting some scenarios to Blackboard about warranties and asking you guys to kind of comment on which warranty you think would apply and why. Again, I'm not going to be grading you based on your participation in that, but if you do find that you have the time, I think it would really be helpful to you to kind of get a little bit deeper into some of this material. All right. Last, express warranties. This is pretty much what you're thinking of when you think of warranties that you get. And of course, we talked about express in other contexts, express contracts, express formation of contracts and things like that. So you know what express means. It means in language, in words. All right. An express warranty is going to be a statement of fact or a promise that can create a warranty if it becomes a basis of the bargain. But let's kind of break this down. We need to kind of discuss some of the different words in here and what they mean. First of all, a statement of fact or a promise. All right. Opinion does not make an express warranty. All right. You go to a car dealership, and the dealer says, "This is the best truck on the market." And you take it home, and after driving it for a week, you think it's a piece of junk. And you realize that, another company has a truck that's actually way better. Well, this is the best car on the market is in a pure opinion. It's not a statement of fact, and it's certainly not a promise. All right, so we're not creating any warranties that way. What you really need to look for in an express warranty is something really specific, some statement of fact about the performance of it. This car gets 35 miles to the gallon. That's a statement of fact. That sort of thing can create an express warranty. All right? But only if it becomes a basis of the bargain. We've talked about this briefly when we talked about fraud, right? In fraud, which we talked about when we were talking about mutual assent. With fraud, mutual assent is destroyed when somebody makes a statement of fact, when somebody intentionally misrepresents a statement of fact that was a basis for the bargain, right? In other words, it's a deal breaker. So again, and this is going to sound very similar to our discussion of fraud, if you go to a car dealership and say, "I'm looking to get a new car, I'm not really sure what I'm interested in," and the guy says, "Well, I have this one over here, it's red, it's a standard transmission, it's on sale, and it gets 35 miles to the gallon," and you go, "That's interesting stuff, I kind of like it." You'd have a hard time saying that its gas mileage was a basis of the bargain. But if you go into a car dealership and say, "I need something that can get me 35 miles to the gallon," and the dealer brings you to a car and says, "This car will get you 35 miles to the gallon, highway," or whatever, right? And you say, "Great, that's exactly what I need." Now you have a statement of fact that becomes a basis of the bargain. So keep an eye out for that. Watch out for, one of the ways that this can get confusing is when you have a salesperson who's doing their sales thing. They're puffing, they're doing sales talk. In other words, you hear things like, "Well, this is the best car in the market." I used that as an example before. That's sales talk. "This gets great gas mileage. This engine is more powerful than anything you've probably ever driven before." Those are all just sales talk. Those sound like statements of fact. They sound like promises, but they do not create express warranties. You need something that's really specific. I will add, though, one of the things that can create express warranties are samples and demonstrations. Back in the old days, and when I say old days, I guess it was like the 40s and 50s, they would have like traveling vacuum cleaner salesmen who would go around to housewives and say, "Let me show you what this thing can do." And they'd pour out a bucket of nails onto a carpet and then take the vacuum cleaner and go over it, and it would pick up the nails, no problem. All right. Now, most ladies in the 50s didn't have a need to vacuum up a bucket full of nails off of the floor. But if somebody thought to themselves after seeing that, "I have to vacuum up a bucket full of nails all the time, and it's such a pain. This vacuum cleaner seems to do it quite well." Well, now all of a sudden that demonstration that it could do that has created a statement of fact or a promise that is now a basis of the bargain. This person is in need of a vacuum cleaner that can do exactly what it was demonstrated that it could do. Now, the salesman may not have ever even said, "This thing can vacuum a bucket full of nails." He may have just done it. But it still creates a fact or promise. So the courts have kind of interpreted the word statement a little bit liberally. But again, it has to be something really specific. And it has to be something that becomes a basis of the bargain. All right, so that's really kind of the only example I can think of that is a guy comes over, gives a demonstration of it doing something amazing, and oh, as it happens, you need something that can do just that. And you just saw him do it, and he's created an expectation or a promise that it could do that. And then, of course, you know, you get your vacuum cleaner and it sucks. So, no pun intended. But anyway, it can't pick up a bucket full of nails. Well, you have a breach of an express warranty. That's your cause of action. Okay, that takes me to the end of this. Again, please spend some time